Hey, that's a tight creepypasta jump you got there, Outlaw. What's that? You want me to read it for you? Don't mind if I do. There's something in my basement. Written by evilartbunny. Narrated by GAkutabi. I've been living in this house for about a year and a half. This happened around the third month of me living in this house. At the time, I considered my house mildly haunted. Firstly, there's the poltergeist. I call it knocks. It's okay as long as you don't ask any questions. It likes to answer on occasions, and the answers aren't always nice. At the start of things, all knocks will do is, well, knock. Once I acknowledged fully that knocks was an actual presence and not just a house settling in, I started to notice it really liked to give its opinion on things. For that reason, I no longer listen to radio, podcasts, or videos on speakers, only earphones. I suspect others, far braver than I, will be tempted to get better acquainted with knocks. I consider that an extremely rash notion. I don't know what knocks actually is and what it can do. What if it is some weird eldritch being living in the walls that will drive one insane if it ever revealed itself? Being cordial with it is as far as I'm willing to go. In that regard, the other little rule with knocks is that if it doesn't want you somewhere, it will rap sharply twice. 1 for yes, 2 for no. It's the clearest communication we have established between us. If I hear 2 knocks entering a room, I just quietly leave and come back later. I've never challenged knocks about this, and I'm now finding out what happens if I did. After a while though, I started to notice knocks will also move things. Plates and cups mostly. Sometimes a cup of water, and once a cup of milk I had left unfinished will be empty in the morning. And most disturbingly, if I left food out, bread in particular, I will notice small but obvious bites out of it. Not mouse bites from the clearly human teeth indentations. I guess that was my motivation to keep a cleaner house. And in this fashion, Knox and I have gone about our own existences. Then, there's the basement. I almost didn't buy the house because of the basement. There's a strange, creepy space in there jutting into one of the walls. It's only a couple of feet deep, about chest height and 4 feet across. It also has yellow painted scaffoldings in it, crisscrossing it at diagonals, so it's just about impossible to store anything in it. I don't know what it is used for, but it had a presence about it. You know, you just know you're not supposed to be in it or even near it. I've not stored anything in the basement because of that. There's the house and water heating units down there, and a bit of leftover junk from previous owners. All wooden tables and chairs. I don't go there unless absolutely necessary. On the handful of occasions I had to be down there, it was only during the day. And even then, I follow a few rules that, as children, we instinctively know when crossing dark, scary places. You don't make any loud or unnecessary noises lest you annoy it or draw its attention. You don't run or rush what you're doing lest you make it think you're afraid of it. But neither do you tarry and test its patience. And when you're done, you turn off the lights and you do not look back. Here's what you need to know before I tell you the rest of the story. I'm scared of the dark. I have always been since I was young, and I'm not sure why. Since I've moved out by myself, learning to deal with the dark has been quite the adjustment. In those early months living here, between knocks and my nyctophobia, I take into the habit of remaining in my room all night. I do all the dishes, set everything up for the next day, and turn off all the lights downstairs while there was still light. Then I take my provisions for the night up to my room, snacks, drinks, instant noodles, etc. My bedroom has an attached bathroom, so there's no need for me to leave it during the night. I even have a mini fridge in my room and a kettle. Once the bedroom doors close, I was in my little sanctuary of pajamas, computer games, chill hop music, and my Kindle reader. Knocks even have the etiquette not to disturb me there very much. Downstairs, night will simply fill the house and will remain so till dawn. Save for the very need for me to creep down and grab something quickly. The elements of the house in the evening were in contractual harmony. I left it alone and it left me alone. That was till my brother and family decided to visit. I'm not close to my brother. We both try our best to bond, I believe, but we're just different people. That aside, I welcome his daughter, his wife, and him happily into my new house. They plan to stay a couple of nights over the weekend. There's only one bedroom besides mine just down the landing. Not big, but they may do. My brother and his wife will sleep in the bed, and I had a mattress for the 5-year-old daughter, Ava. Ava was a quiet child. Shy, polite, and obedient. She spent most of her time in the house reading her books, scribbling in her art pad, and watching videos on her tablet. It was about 7:30, just after our delivery dinner, when Ava approached me. "Uncle," she said innocently, "who's the little girl living here?" If you haven't got her, I spook easily, and this was classic spooky. My first thought was whether Knox had revealed itself to her. It's not the first time Knox had messed around with house guests, but not wanting to alarm Ava, I responded with a reassuring smile. "Which little girl?" "The one standing by the door in the kitchen," she said, looking back towards the aforementioned kitchen. "I don't like how she looks at me. She's scary," Ava added in a whisper. I swallowed and felt it get stuck in my throat. "Is she still there?" I asked. Ava shook her head. I walked over to the kitchen as casually as I could and took a look at the door there. It led to the basement and was shut as always. I did not open it, but instead went over to a little key rack I had hanging by the sliding door out the back. On the rack was an old-fashioned, slightly rusty key. This was the basement door key. Grabbing it, I turned smartly and locked the door with a loud clunk. I tested the handle firmly, and the door didn't budge. I went back to Ava and said, "There, it's locked now. Nothing is coming out that door." That seemed to satisfy her, and she went off to find her mother. I did think I should have told my brother and his wife, but for one reason or another, I never brought it up in conversation. They all went to bed early that night, and I retreated into my room. I noticed before falling asleep, despite the lack of wind, the house was creaking a fair bit. On reflection, I think Knox was trying to tell me something. I was woken up by a sharp rap on my door. I came out to find my brother was looking flustered. Ava was missing. My brother had rose and found her gone from the mattress. The guest bedroom door was open, so he thought she must have gone to the bathroom. But when she didn't come back after a couple of minutes, he went to check. She wasn't in the toilet. That's when he had woken his wife. They'd been searching for a while before he decided to wake me up as well. I joined them in their search immediately, and we flipped on every light in every room and calling out for Ava. We looked into every cupboard, behind every curtain, and under all the furniture she may have fit under. Finally, my brother headed into the backyard to see if his daughter was there. It was the only door to the outside that Ava could possibly have unlocked. His wife was fretfully going through all the rooms again. To the worry feeling I had in my gut was added a sense of cold dread. I knew where Ava had gone. I glanced over to the key rack. The basement key was missing, and I was certain I had placed it back. I tested the handle of the door and found it unlocked. Swinging the door open, I was greeted by a pitch darkness that seemed to flow out and chill me to the bone. 2 sharp raps sounded overhead. 2 for no. I looked up a little bit surprised Knoxville cared for my well-being. Or was it also scared of the basement? But my 5-year-old niece was down there, and scared as I was, I had to go down. I considered for a fleeting moment to call my brother or sister-in-law to join me. But that just didn't feel right. It was one of those rules I just knew had to be followed. Don't show it you're scared. Don't reveal you even know it's there. Maybe that's why they always split up in horror movies. Just rules we all know but never tell each other. I flicked the switch on to the basement. No light came out. The bulb must have gone out. Fish sticks. Ava? I called out. I caught the faintest sound of movement from below. I turned on my phone flashlight and carefully descended down the flight of stairs. Last thing we needed right now was for me to tumble down and break a leg. I scanned the basement with the light, and the legs of old furniture gleamed back at me while casting shadows that spelled profane things across the walls. It was biting cold down there. My breath was misty, and the bare flesh of my arms prickled. I didn't waste time looking under the tables and chairs. I went straight for the strange space. Sure enough, there, past the odd diagonal scaffolding, was a bundle of dark hair and pajamas. She looked to be a lot further in than the 2 feet deep I knew the space to be. Ava, I whispered. She sniffed and turned to look at me with tear-stained, wide-eyed look. Come out, Ava. It's okay. I'm here. She shook her head at me, not budging. I took in a deep breath, then reached in between the scaffoldings. Despite having to contort myself between the bars, I was able to grab Ava under her arm and gently gather her to me. She broke out into loud sobs as she clutched at my shirt and buried her head into my shoulder. The cold suddenly flipped into a suffocating heat. I felt sick from the sudden change of temperature. Still guided only by the light of my phone, I headed for the stairs. Was it darker? I felt like my visibility was poorer than before. The stack of upside-down furniture, though being no more than a few feet in length, suddenly felt like a corridor stretching away. I swatted with my hand holding the phone, as if trying to push back the darkness. The flare of my phone light did a little mad dance, throwing shadows in all directions. But I didn't stare too hard at the shapes in the dark. I didn't want to make out the silhouette of a little girl. Instead, I focused all my efforts into pushing past the pile of furniture, stumbled up the stairs, and burst out into the orange light of my kitchen. I collapsed to my knees, still holding Ava. I was panting like I had run a marathon. My sister-in-law saw us, gasped and immediately ran over. She was weeping in relief. My brother came in from the backyard just then. As I released Ava to her parents, I caught something from her little wrist. The basement door key. "Why do you go down there, baby?" my sister-in-law asked. Ava wasn't able to answer as she just wailed. I didn't blame her. I was just about to wail myself. "You're bleeding," I heard my brother say. He was pointing at my leg. I looked down and saw a bright red stain slowly spread across my left trouser leg. I gingerly pulled it back, peeling it away from my skin, to reveal several long scratches across the back of my leg, like something had tried to grab my heel. "Must have scraped something down there," I mumbled. Now that I was aware of them, and the adrenaline was petering out, the wounds were really beginning to sting. My brother said something about having the scratches checked out in case of tetanus or something. Then he and his wife turned their attention to the inconsolable Ava and headed back to their room, leaving me alone with the gaping black of the basement door. I could feel menace radiating from the darkness. Very cautious to make no sudden moves as though the door were to open the maw of an alligator, I slowly swung the door shut. Even shut, I could feel the hatred beat against it from the other side. I placed the key into the keyhole and locked it, then allowed myself to breathe once more. 2 sharp raps sounded from overhead. Yeah, I know, Knox. It wasn't over. My brother and family decided in the morning not to stay in the house. They hadn't been able to get much more out of Ava, but they definitely got the picture that she did not want to stay in my house. I felt exactly the same. They packed up and made ready to leave. Ava came up to me to cuddle goodbye. I knelt down to her level and she gave me this knowing look. "Was it the little girl?" I asked. Ava nodded. "She said I had to, or she will eat mommy and daddy." I think my mind went blank after that. I don't remember saying goodbye to my brother and his wife. I don't remember the car leaving. I just remember standing in the driveway, facing my house, wondering whether I should go in or not. My leg was now beginning to ache from the gashes in it. I hadn't done much other than dab it in with tissues till the bleeding had stopped. They were deeper than I first thought and had a ragged quality to them. Finally, I decided I will find a clinic open on a Saturday and have it bandaged properly while I consider what to do. I passed by the basement door to get ready. In the morning light, the hateful aura was missing from the door. Well, that was some relief. When I saw the doctor, she asked me if I was attacked. I laughed sheepishly and said it was furniture corners. She raised an eyebrow at me quizzically. Then silently, she raised a hand, made it into a claw, and gently drew it across the bandage where the cuts were. Those cuts certainly weren't made by furniture corners, not even by an animal claw, as the line drawn by the thumb attested to. They'd be made by a hand. "Are you sure you're safe? Do you need any help?" the doctor asked me kindly. I was very sure I was not safe, and I was very sure I needed help, but I just shook my head. What can I say? What could I say? I had been abused by some demonic entity in my basement. Getting nothing else out of me, she resigned to put accident down as a cause of injury. It had been a long wait for the doctor, so it was well after lunch that I left the clinic. I sat down at a nearby fast food outlet, still unsure what to do, when my brother called me. He told me they had relocated to a hotel somewhere in town, and I was welcome to join them for dinner. I said sure. My shout for the bad night, I said. He chuckled softly and said dealing with night terrors was just all part of being a parent. Then he also said they realized they were missing a milk bottle. They think Ava had been holding a milk bottle when she went down to the basement, as she usually fell asleep with one. I told my brother I looked even though I wouldn't have stepped into the basement for $1 million. I have a problem saying no. I put down the phone and thought about the basement with the milk bottle lying in that odd, ominous space collecting dust. And that's when it hit me. Milk. The cups of liquid that were finished by the morning, the nibbles in the bread left out. What if that wasn't Knox doing? What if the thing in the basement wandered out at night and ate things? I squirmed at the thought, but I remember once having visited some old cottages while on tour in the UK. The guy had pointed out to us a metal saucer with milk in it and some biscuits, artfully set upon a large flat rock close to the cottage entrance. Apparently, it was a centuries-old tradition for the homeowners to leave milk and biscuit out for the fae that wandered through and around the house in the witching hour. He also pointed to a corner of the building where the angle had been beveled away. Said it was because they believed the stone intruded upon a fae path, so they cut it away to let the fair folk pass unhindered. The joke was that the cottage was haunted too, but the inhabitants were far more afraid of angering the fae than the resident ghosts. Did I now find myself in a very similar situation? I went home and packed a bag. I would have cleaned my house up after guests left, and there was no presence from the basement door in the light of day. But my imagination would have stopped wandering if I turned a corner or opened a door to find some scary little girl looking up at me. 100 times no. I decided I would test this fae theory of mine before making any further decisions. Just before I left, I poured a glass of milk and left it to the side of the basement door with a slice of bread. Then, making sure it wasn't the very last thing I had to do, I unlocked the basement and hurried out my front door. I went out for dinner with my brother and family. Ava seemed to have mostly recovered from her previous night trauma. They didn't ask me about the missing bottle. Maybe they forgot? Or maybe they knew something was off about the basement. I didn't tell anyone I was not going home that night. Instead, I spent an uneasy night in a cheap hotel reading up on folklore. Turns out there are a lot of cultures where people leave milk, food, and even animal blood out around their houses to appease strange nocturnal humanoid creatures. Some of those creatures play pranks. Others suck blood out from your toes and stole baby out of cribs. In the morning, I headed back to my house. First thing I did was walk very cautiously over the kitchen. Sure enough, the milk was at a lower level than when I had left it, and there were nibbles out of the bread. A sharp rap came from somewhere deeper in the house. One knock for yes. The first day, I had waited for nightfall in the kitchen. I had a backpack in the car in case I needed to make a break for it. I was sweating cold sweat, but I held my ground. The aura of menace never came from the door. At around 1 in the morning, I very cautiously went up to my room and locked my door. As an extra precaution, thanks to my research, I pour a line of iron fillings across the threshold of my room. They don't like cold iron, right? So the stories say. The sense of fear never returned to the basement door for a long time after. And that's how I form a truce with the thing in the basement. Every night I will leave milk and a piece of bread on the kitchen floor by the basement door. It doesn't always eat it. One last note, and I add this as a note because I'm still unsure whether what I saw was true or just my imagination. One night I was late home for some reason or other. I hastily washed the dishes, locked the doors, and set off my peace offering on the kitchen floor. It was dark by then, and the windows were black panes. I turned the lights off one by one, backing towards the stairs, handing ownership of the downstairs to the night things. I ascended to the upper floor and finally turned off the stair light. Besides the other night fleeing with Ava through the basement, of which I received scratches upon my calf as payment for breaking the rules, it was the only time I broke the rules. Maybe I heard something or saw something out of the corner of my eye. For whatever reason, I turned around and looked back into the darkness. There, on the third or fourth step of the stairs, was a pale, small hand raised and reaching out towards me. It connected to an impossibly long arm that snaked towards the kitchen, loosing itself around the corner. In an instant, it whipped back into the shadows out of sight. It was so fast the whole thing might have been a trick of my eyes. Regardless, I fled to my room and have never, ever glanced back into the darkness of my house at night. I would like to say that besides that possibly imaginary instance, I had no further dealings with the thing in the basement. But that's not the case. No, I'm afraid, as mad as this might sound, I will need its help as my house went from mildly haunted to what the fish sticks am I still doing here. And that's today's story, Outlaw. I hope you enjoyed it. This is part 2 of the series that I mentioned before, Nox, by the same author. This story just keeps getting better and better. You must wonder, why does the main character still stay there, even though all this poltergeist and weird stuff still happens there? That takes a lot of courage, and he's a coward. Well, once again, thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a like and a comment. And like always, I see y'all on the wasteland.